in New York City, and we are about to listen to some very inspiring women who are driving the force in the climate space. So while everyone is joining, we're just going to wait a little bit. The panel is set to start in about 5 minutes. So once again, we are here in honor of New York City Climate Week, and there are tons of events being all week throughout the city, but tonight we are going to give you a special front row seat at the Women and Climate panel. We are live from the Human Scale office, where you will hear from some extraordinary women working to make difference for the future of our planet. I know we have a few watch parties happening this evening and tons of viewers at home, so hang tight. I know we have a ton of watch parties happening this evening, so just hang tight as we wait for some more of you to join. Thank you. I see some more of you guys joining. Welcome. We are live streaming from the Women and Climate celebration in New York City. The panel is set to start in a few minutes, so just sit tight. Again, it is New York City Climate Week, so we are going to be hearing from some very special women on how they're making a difference for the future of our planet. Some really special innovations and startups. We just watched the sunset from this beautiful room in Human Scale office in New York City. So we are here in honor of New York City Climate Week. There are a very large handful of events happening in New York City this week, but we have some really extraordinary panelists. We can't wait for you all to meet them. The theme tonight is green, so we have a lot of wonderful green looks you'll also see. There's one of them. That's Natasha with Women in Climate. Thank you guys again for joining. The panel should start very soon, but if you're just tuning in, we are live streaming from the Women and Climate celebration in New York City. This event should be about an hour long, but we will be hearing some really impressive women speaking about their sustainability efforts. Thank you so much for joining. We should be getting started momentarily. Thank you for your patience. I know that we have some watch parties happening tonight and tons of viewers at home, so we're just waiting for everyone to join and everyone here at the event to get seated. Once again, we're here in New York City, here for NYC Climate Week. This is just one of many events going on this week to help bring a bunch of innovators together and brainstorm and talk and collaborate together. We're here at the Human Scale office with this amazing view of Bryant Park in New York City. Thank you so much for joining. Everyone's finding their seats, as you can see, so we're going to start momentarily.
I feel like there's a whole transition there. like I'm so young in my career. Like,
If you have any speakers that you're especially excited to hear from, feel free to drop it in our comment section. I'm sure they'll be very happy to know that you're looking forward to their speeches and their conversations. Everyone's super excited over here.
not helping figure it out. That's okay. A second and third really connect with yourself.
Also adjacent, but in a different way.
Tonight you can expect to hear from some leading women in the climate space. They're going to be sharing their work, what they're doing around climate optimism and climate action. So the goal of tonight is to learn how everyone here can get involved in climate action. There is nothing too small.
Hi everyone! We're going to get started in just a moment, but I just want to make an announcement. Everyone from the food area could migrate over to where the programming is happening. We're so excited to get started. Thanks.
No, I went to school in Illinois. So we're from Boston though, which is why I was like, wanted to go back to Northeast. Not close enough with mountains, just like sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. I could try to like always live in a different city every year. So kind of break out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a report.
For yourself, are you local or?
I mean, I live here now, but
Yes, you will be able to rewatch the playback, so don't worry about that.
college on the West Coast, grew up on the West Coast.
Thank you for your question. If you are not able to stay the entirety of the panel, we will be able to save the talk so you can watch it on a later date.
I know. And then if you look for Illinois, I also get that.
Once again, we are at the Women and Climate panel. Our guests are taking their seats, so we'll start momentarily. But we are so excited to hear from women in the climate space. They're going to be talking about how they have gotten involved in climate action and how we can all get involved in climate action as well. We are here in New York City for NYC Climate Week. We're super excited to hear all of these inspiring women tonight.
I moved back to LA, then to Vancouver, Canada for a period of time. My partner is
We will be starting momentarily. Thank you so much for joining the live stream. Again, if you're really looking forward to hearing some of your favorite speakers, feel free to drop some comments in. I know we have some watch parties going on. Thank you so much. Everyone is really stoked to be here. Human Scale was very kind to let us use their office for this panel. Thank you, Human Scale.
visited the issue work at climate.
Tonight we are going to hear from some extraordinary women in the climate space. And they're going to share the work that they've been doing surrounding climate optimism and, of course, action. So everyone here, I believe, is super excited to hear about how we can all get involved. Go ahead. Yep. Don't worry about it. We have some people coming to sit. Thank you for your patience. Okay. If I could, I would show you all of the people that we have here because we have tons. But I can just tell you that everyone is super excited. So thank you for waiting. We're about to start very, very soon. Thank you so much again. We are going to get started very soon and hear from some amazing women speakers in the climate space. We're going to move over to a different microphone now, so bear with me, please.
How's it going? How is everyone's New York City Climate Week going? Yeah? All right, okay, good. I like that. So we're gonna get started here. This is our first Women in Climate New York City Climate Week event. So welcome. We're so excited to have you here. Thank you to each and every one of you for coming, and thank you for caring. It really means a lot to us that you're here. We also have a few live stream events happening, and we have hundreds of people tuning in all around the world, so thank you to those tuning in all around the world. My name is Natasha Lekwa. I am a volunteer with Women in Climate. I met Michelle earlier this year, and I was working for another climate organization, and she really inspired me. She really lit a fire under me in terms of what she's doing with Women in Climate. And it really is something that I think is special. It's something that's different. I think that community is such a huge aspect for what we need to do in the world, right? So I am so excited to have her be inspiring me each and every day. I come from a line of very strong women in my life. I'm very lucky to be surrounded by many women who inspire and empower me, including my mother, who is working the registration desk. So it's a little bit of a family affair. But Michelle inspires me each and every day, and she is the founder of Clever Carbon as well as Women in Climate. And so why don't we give her a huge round of applause? And she is going to come up and tell us a little bit about what she does. We have the programming, if you want to go back. So the programming here, so you can follow along with who's on stage and what's coming up next. And yeah, I will turn it over to Michelle. Thank you everyone for being here.
Can everyone hear me okay? Don't feel like the mic is on. Okay, all right, it's on. Great. Thank you everyone for being here. I cannot believe we have such a big crowd during such a busy week at New York Climate Week, and so thank you so much for spending your time here. A little bit about myself. I am the founder of Women in Climate, and I started my career in technology, working for companies like Salesforce and for DocuSign, and I started my first climate project in 2020. It's called Clever Carbon. We teach people about carbon footprint literacy in a really hip and fun way, and over 28,000 people globally have taken our 2-minute carbon footprint quiz. So if you don't know your carbon footprint, go find out today. I started my second climate project, which is Women in Climate, this year. And it started in February. I decided I was going to throw a dinner, a vegan restaurant. I was going to just invite whoever would come. And lo and behold, 12 people showed up. And I started doing dinners monthly since then. And I think we've done over 12 dinners now in Boston, in Toronto, and soon to come London, Paris, and Berlin. And together with my co-organizer, Stephanie Corbelli, we have really built a special community. Not only have we thrown the dinners, we've done networking events, we've had picnics and co-working days, and we have a very thriving Slack community, thanks to Stephanie. And our goal is to create a joyful and safe space for more women to learn and talk about climate. You don't need a special degree. You don't need to quit your job. Everyone can work in climate today. And the goal of Women in Climate is to make this a really joyful experience, bring more people into the fold, allow women to connect globally to accelerate their ideas and their solutions, and also give a platform for women to share their stories, their creative ideas, and their solutions. For all our Women in Climate members in the room, will you raise your hand? Amazing. Thank you so much for making my climate journey so enjoyable. I really appreciate you being here. And if you're in a position, we are accepting financial support through donations Women in Climate is an initiative of the Climate Literacy and Community Foundation, which is a 501c3 charity. So a little bit about this event tonight. You know, why did we decide to have a celebration? Well, in the sea of events that go on during New York Climate Week, and of course I knew I was going to forget that. Thank you for putting that slide up. In the sea of events that go on during New York Climate Week, there's so many events on new technologies and ESG and policy, which are all very important topics, but it just felt right to the community to throw a celebration to celebrate all the women that are taking climate action today. And we are highlighting some of those women through the programming for this evening, but we also wanted to use the event to set an example. We are Blue verified by Oceanic Global, our partners, which means that we've actively reduced plastic, we've reduced waste, we have reusable glassware, vegan, vegetarian fare for our food. I've also invited a number of our friends and small businesses to exhibit here for free so everyone can learn more about how to live sustainability every day. And we also wanted every speaker to be someone who really cares about our planet on stage and off stage. So we have extended speaker profiles, and you can scan their QR codes where you can learn about their source of climate optimism and their favorite climate resource that they want to share with the crowd here. So in closing, I wanted to give a special thank you to our sponsor. Our Gigaton sponsor is Human Scale. Thank you for this lovely space and everything that you've contributed to our event today. Thank you also to Energy Hub, to First Republic Bank, and to Skylight Law. And to our partners, Bruce, they are our exclusive media partner, helping us with the streaming here today, and for Oceanic Global for helping us become Blue verified. And I also wanted to take a moment to thank our speakers. There were so many places that you could be here tonight, and you chose to be here. Thank you for that. Thank you to our small businesses, and thank you to our volunteers who poured in countless hours to help make this event possible. And this is really just the beginning. We have our first kickoff event here. We have a virtual global activation coming up soon. We have maybe some dinners in DC, and we also have an activation coming up for our holiday. We have a holiday party planned, International Women's Day next year, and a full day summit for Climate Week next week because the demand has been off the charts. So I hope everyone enjoys the programming. Thank you for being here, and let's bring on speakers.
Hi, my name is Jane Abernethy. First of all, you don't leave my mic on. Is that true? Better? Whoa. Is it better? Third time is a charm. Perfect. Well, thank you very much for coming. My name is Jane Abernethy. I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer here at Human Scale, and I'm going to be the moderator. We have two great guests with us. And I'll first just tell you a little bit about my background. This panel is about women in climate and kind of our career paths. So my background is I started as an industrial designer, designing products. I loved it. I love design. It's amazing. But it's also very impactful. It's something I always thought about as I was designing products. You know, these products are going into mass production. Any decision made gets repeated hundreds of thousands of times a year in mass production. And I was quite vocal about that. And the folks at Human Scale were quite receptive to that, and then eventually asked me to lead a project, which then grew into a department. And I have some fantastic team members who are so efficient and so effective at what they do. Two of them are right there in the back. If you guys mind if I put you on the spot to wave? They're amazing. And so I moved from being an industrial designer to leading sustainability, and then growing that into a department that then now influences our overall company, working with the other executives in finance, operations, marketing, product development, all of the other teams. We're kind of like an octopus where we really reach our tentacles out everywhere and influence how we operate. And so that's been a really exciting journey to be on. We just last summer had 60% of our products certified climate positive, which was a very exciting milestone we've been working towards for a good long time. So with that, I'm going to ask my fellow panelists, or the panelists, and I guess I'm the moderator, to join me. So we have Dr. Shweta. Not bad. Let me try one more time.
First name's harder than the last name.
Shweta Chakraborty.
Perfect.
Okay, perfect. He is the president of We Don't Have Time. And then we have Martina Donlon, much easier to pronounce. And she's climate lead at the UN. So we're going to have a little bit of a chat about careers and how we get into working in climate, because none of us started that. And I don't know about the two of you, but I was thinking of what to study, and I was in high school thinking, what should I study and to shape my career. Climate was not an option that was discussed. It wasn't something you would so my first question is, I want to sort of ask you to introduce kind of your career path and where you got to, and maybe we'll take it one at a time. Where you came from and where you got to.
Sure, happy to. Thank you so much for having me. How gorgeous is the space, right? It's beautiful. This background is New York City, and this is why we're doing it. Just the environment, and regardless of whether you're into nature or not, some people think nature gets in buildings. Nature gets in the way of buildings. Maybe some people who are in New York City feel that more than others, but regardless, what a gorgeous environment that we have the opportunity to continue to ensure exists for our generation, future generations, and can really be enjoyed by all. So that is the charge, right? Regardless of what your background is, what you studied, ultimately we are here for this point and purpose, looking outside the window, preserving this beauty, and ushering in maybe a future that is even better than anything we've ever created before. So that's not what I studied, right? That's what I came to understand as my career developed. I actually did my PhD in behavioral science, and I was applying it to improving patient outcomes. And it actually became really relevant when COVID-19 broke. A lot of people spoke about COVID-19 as a public health issue. Of course it is. But the angle I took on it is this was completely predictable based on how humans interact with the environment. We are so disregarding of our natural environment. We don't treat it well. We are very insensitive to the ecosystems. And are we surprised that we have a persistent and emerging infectious disease like COVID-19 breakout? No, this is exactly what you would anticipate when you treat nature that disrespectfully. So I actually started my career looking at how to improve patient outcomes, how to reduce the emergence of infectious diseases, and that sort of naturally lent itself to climate change. Once you learn about climate change and the implications of the planet warming, really nothing else matters. I mean, nothing matters if we have to worry about how long our children are outside, how long they can be on the playground before we have to say, come in, you've been in the heat too long. Sweat doesn't evaporate off the body after 95 degrees Fahrenheit. That is dangerous to human health, right? So once the penny dropped for me there, I decided to apply my field of behavioral science to helping people better close the perceptions and around climate, or the lack of fear or awareness around climate, and the reality of what we were facing. Closing that gap became my contribution to the climate crisis. How do you communicate climate change in a way that's going to resonate with audiences and ultimately result in adaptive behavior so that people protect themselves, their communities, and also mitigation. So we're actually able to ensure that it doesn't get any worse out there, that we can continue to enjoy this beautiful backdrop behind us. So that's very much my background. I did not start in it. I began to think about how my unique discipline could be applied to solving and tackling the climate crisis.
Perfect. And then how about you, Martina?
So I come at it also not from a climate background originally. I've been working on climate for less than 2 years now, actually, on full time. I came at it from a journalism background. So my childhood dream was always to be a foreign correspondent, reporting from wherever. So I studied international relations because I was very interested in international affairs, becoming a foreign correspondent. I wanted to know what the world was like. So I studied international affairs in Boston. I ended up in the US. I did start working in journalism for a few years in Switzerland and in the US. And then I ended up at the UN 15 years ago. So I've been with the United Nations for 15 years, working on topics from sustainable development to human rights, always in communications. And I'll talk a little bit more later maybe about how I came into the climate topic.
Well, maybe that's the next place to go, because I was going to ask you next, what are you most proud of in the realm of working in climate? So maybe do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, that's a great segue, because what I'm most proud of right now, I would say, is to have built this first climate communications team at the United Nations Secretariat. Of course, we've always had people, or for a few years we've had people working on climate communications, but it was always part of. Is this working?
No, not really. Yeah. We're going to switch it up real quick.
Right. I'll just pull it up.
So we're going to share one mic just because they're all connected. It's kind of a technical thing. So I'll give this to all of the...
Okay, great. I think, do you want to?
Yeah, if you hold it down
Great.
here, that'd be great.
Is this good? Okay, much better. Okay, great. Okay, you didn't miss too much, at least not from me. But well, I'll restart just briefly. The question was, what am I most proud of in my career? And I was saying that I've been really proud to have the opportunity to build the first climate communications team at the UN Secretariat. Well, we have had people working on climate for many years, of course. It was always under the bigger umbrella of sustainable development, because climate action, of course, is one of the 17 sustainable development goals. But climate has become such an issue in itself that almost 2 years ago it was decided to devote a full post to leading a climate team, and I had the honor to take on that role. So I've built a small team. We have a graphic designer, we have a multimedia producer, we have a writer, and we've produced a lot of great content for the UN's digital platforms, for the web and social, and we've built some incredible partnerships, including with Google and YouTube, that have allowed us to reach huge audiences and have increased the views on the UN Climate website tenfold over the past year. So that's something I'm really proud of. I'm also proud we've built a really great relationship with the Secretary General's office. We're supporting, his policy agenda very closely. We're working very closely with the agencies across the UN system that have the data and the science on climate change, like the IPCC, the UN Environment Programme, etc. So that's something I'm happy to have built this far and look forward to continuing. Thank you.
So, I'm actually very proud of working with the UN, so thank you for everything that you have done to build out this multilateral organization's communication abilities, because it's incredible how far the UN has come across all of the agencies, really establishing itself as it's always been the multilateral organization to disseminate what is encouraged that member countries should be doing. But now it's really, I'm talking about exponential improvement in terms of really reaching audiences and publics. And one of my proudest achievements, building off of that, is a campaign called #Don'tChooseExtinction. We've had over 1.5 billion views, and our platform, the platform I represent, We Don't Have Time, has become media partners with the UNDP, agency of the UN, to push this campaign out and to reach publics all over the world to explain to them what subsidizing fossil fuels is doing. We are subsidizing, just this year, something like $600 billion in supporting oil, coal, and gas. And if you actually look at the costs associated with these subsidies, we are talking about something like $6 trillion a year. These numbers are not just coming out of thin air, and also they're hard to comprehend. As a behavioral scientist, I understand that million, billion, trillion actually kind of get confused. They're just big numbers, I get it. But 6 trillion is out of control, and that is what we are sort of blindly, naively contributing to. And what the UN has been able to do is really raise awareness that this is not acceptable, and there's a role for member states of the UN and individuals within those countries to play to demand that these funds get repurposed for
what we really need. We need to transition to clean energy. We need to help vulnerable countries around the world build up their resiliency to climate change impacts. We're going into COP27, and the UN is hosting these talks in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt the first 2 weeks of November. And these smaller nations, or the vulnerable nations around the world, are going to be asking wealthier nations, are you guys going to help support us? We didn't contribute to the climate crisis, but we need help now. And you've made so much money off of coal, oil, and gas. Can you at least make sure that we're protected? And that's a demand, thanks to the UN, that will be made and will be heard, and we can repurpose these insane amounts of money we're putting into dirty energy subsidies to support these vulnerable nations and to be able to transition into a clean energy future that we can all enjoy. So I'm actually, one of my proudest moments really has been the relationship and the bond that we've created. We don't have time with the UN, so thank you for sharing that. It allowed me to share mine too.
Great, and so maybe this question we can tackle kind of in 1 or 2 sentences, because we're already short of time. It's a very quick panel. So where do you see the climate movement going currently?
So what I'm most excited about is that companies are finally getting on board, right? Whether it's because they're being asked to, because in the United States, recently we passed the Inflation Reduction Act, $370 billion going towards helping America transition to clean energy, forcing companies to come and meet that standard and the requirement, but it's also better for business. It's actually more beneficial for businesses to adapt to the realities of this new clean energy transition and move forward with it. Don't be stuck waiting to see what the leaders in your field and sector do. Become that leader, and it'll be less painful. So we're noticing that companies are really getting on board, proactively preparing, which is cheaper again. Spending that $100 million is still gonna be less than that $100 billion, and that's been what's hard to explain to individuals, to businesses, because it still feels like very expensive upfront charge, but ultimately it makes better business sense for companies and for the communities that they operate in. So what I'm most excited about seeing is the commitment to proactively preparing and transitioning operations to clean energy. Because once we get private sector to really move in that direction, now we're going to see an acceleration with public sector, with government, with academia. They tend to be laggards somewhat, but it's going to move society along more swiftly.
I fully agree with that. A really exciting shift we're seeing. And I think the other thing I wanted to point out, more building on your last answer actually about the vulnerability of countries that have contributed least to the crisis. So that's another sort of shift I'm seeing in the climate movement, is that shift from a movement that was very much driven by the global north to now much stronger, much more voices coming from the global south. If you look at the youth movement, for instance, we're not seeing just Greta anymore. We're seeing Vanessa Nakate from Uganda, Elizabeth Watuti from Kenya, Shia Bastida from Mexico. Those voices are getting stronger, and with those voices, those issues are getting stronger. The issues affecting the global south and those who've contributed least to the crisis, that are suffering the most. Look at the drought in Somalia, look at the floods in Pakistan. It's becoming obvious to everyone, and those issues of climate justice, of finance, of loss and damage, they're going to be huge at the next climate conference in Egypt, and rightly so.
So, last question. I think that's what we're trying to see. If there's anyone who is in the audience who is now inspired but maybe doesn't work in climate, what would you say to those folks if they are looking to get into the field?
So the tagline of my organization, We Don't Have Time, is that together we are the solution to the climate crisis. The reason I said what I said in the beginning, as somebody who initially worked in public health and infectious diseases, there was an obvious connection once COVID hit to the relationship between infectious disease and climate, but regardless of what sector you're operating in, there is a relationship to the planet warming. Nothing matters if we have to worry about how long our children are outside, and you have a role to play. If you breathe air, if you drink water, and I'm not being facetious, it means that you are a stakeholder in the climate crisis and you have a role to play. So even if you think you are miles away from having some sort of impact, I implore you to join the movement, get involved. It's easy to do. So one example is download the We Don't Have Time app. It is free.
I'm not making anything out of this. I just would like to bring people into the movement who, especially ones who say, I'm just one person, what can I do? Actually a lot. One person, when you pair with a second person, now you're a team. Pair with a third person, you're a group. Imagine being connected to groups around the world. Now we're a movement. And that's the point of the We Don't Have Time platform, is we connect movements, we accelerate solutions, and we bring together collectively all of the impacts we need to overcome this climate crisis. So there's much you can do. Find that connection, but at a minimum, join as an individual, see what happens. See, and go from there.
Yeah, and I would say for me, one of the most exciting things about this topic is that it is so wide and it's so deep, and you can learn something new every day. I mean, you just don't stop learning about it. And it's a scientific issue. You have to study the science, because everything we do, everything we say needs to be science-based. And I say that coming from a communications background, because there's so much misinformation out there, distorting the reality, delaying action, even leading to harmful action. So studying the science is crucial, but it's not just a scientific issue, it's a social issue, it's a human rights issue, it's a political issue, it's an economic issue. So pick what aspect you want to get involved in. Are you interested in transport, in energy, in food? There's a climate angle. Pick what you're interested in, join the movement, get involved, and help us, get that transition underway that we need to see if we want to preserve a livable planet.
Thank you very much, and those are very inspiring thoughts. We have the contact or the pages here if you're interested to know more about the speakers, us three. And I believe our contact information is on there as well. So if you want to reach out if any questions come up or thoughts about our conversation come up, then you're welcome to do that. Thank you very much.
Jane, Martina, and Shweta, thank you so much, and thank you everyone for bearing with us with the technical difficulties. So next up, we have Anne-Therese Gennari and Lindsay Nunes, and they will be speaking about climate optimism. Very excited for this as well.
Okay, can you hear me? Yes. All right, good evening, everyone. I'm Lindsay Nunes, and I'm so excited to be speaking here at the Women in Climate Celebration. First, a little bit about me. I'm on the organizing team for Women in Climate. I'm a web developer here at HumanScale, and I also write a weekly climate action newsletter called Save Our Happy Place, where I aim to help answer that question of what can I actually do about climate change? And how can I do it without feeling perpetually disheartened, overwhelmed, and without feeling powerless? How can I do that while feeling optimistic, perhaps? Which brings us to the conversation today with Anne-Therese Gennari of The Climate Optimist, where we'll be discussing what is climate optimism. Is it a good idea? Is it even safe to be optimistic about climate change? And if so, how can we go about that? So with that,
Feels a lot of pressure in those questions. Hi everyone, my name is Anne-Therese Gennari, founder of The Climate Optimist. For a very long time, I've been trying to figure out how we get people to feel inspired and motivated and empowered in the realm of climate change and wanting to actually participate in what we can do to create a better world. And so I started The Climate Optimist. It's sort of a media company. I'm trying to figure out what it is, but I do speaking like this, I do workshops, I have a book coming out, The Climate Optimist Handbook, coming out this fall. And I'm very excited to be here. So let's kick it out.
okay. All right, Anne, let's start with the basics. What is climate optimism?
Great question. For me, climate optimism is a mindset shift. It sort of exists in this balance of optimism and awareness, which means that to truly be an optimist, you also have to be willing to be aware of the problem. Many people sort of mistake optimism for toxic positivity, so to speak, which is this idea that we always have to look at the world from a lens of sunshine and sparkles and think everything is going to work out well. That is not true optimism. To be and remain an optimist, you actually have to fuel and nurture that optimism for yourself, which looks like participating in the action and showing up for the work that we think needs to be done. And so that starts from being aware of the realities of our circumstances and acting from that place of balanced acceptance. And from that acceptance, we can say, okay, we know what's going on, we understand this crisis, and from there move into a place of empowered action towards the world we want to see next. And so that is what climate optimism is, in my opinion. And it's just recognizing that since the future truly is up to us, we have nothing to lose in giving it all we've got. And also to realize that we get to be excited about that. To be alive today is actually an extraordinary gift, because it means that every single one of us, like they just mentioned earlier, we have a part to play, whatever that looks like. And that's pretty exciting, because we are here to make history together. So for me, that's why I am a climate optimist.
I love that perspective on climate optimism. Great answer. I think I'd also like to add that a big part, at least for me, around climate optimism is really taking time to acknowledge all of the amazing things that are already happening in the climate space. So just looking out at this room filled with people who are passionate and excited to help make a change. I mean, there are so many people who are out there not only talking about climate change, but also innovating, collaborating, creating, lobbying, all for this change that we want to see. And that alone is something to be super optimistic about. So I think, just taking a moment and just like really feeling that bit of gratitude, acknowledging and celebrating those small wins, and, just letting that kind of balance out a lot of the heavier conversations that are important but can, weigh you down. And then also, just taking part in things like this and building that community are so important. But I know that there is a lot more to it. So, Anne, why don't you tell us how you can show up as an optimist?
So again, for me, to be a climate optimist or climate optimism can only exist if three things are at play sort of at the same time. Again, it's awareness and acceptance. We have to start from that grounded acceptance of like, okay, this is reality. Secondly, there has to be curiosity and excitement. What if the world can be even better in the future? What if our lives can be healthier, better, freer in so many ways? And so what does it look like to show up today in that sort of curiosity and excitement so that we can continue to build on an action that brings that future closer? And lastly, there's action. We actually have to start, taking action towards what we want to see. And I don't just say that because like, to earn to be a climate optimist, you have to also participate in the work. But actually, by taking action, you will fuel your own optimism, because you're proving to yourself that we can do things differently. You're proving to yourself that, okay, there are different ways of living life, and maybe I feel better doing it this way instead. So those are the three things I think are very essential. I also want to just point out that we're human beings. There will be days when we are stressed and anxious and moody. If you're a woman, you have days you just want to like snap at everyone in your way. Maybe that's just me. I'm also pregnant, so maybe that just has an adding factor. But we have those days where we don't feel like changing the world. And I think that's important to recognize. And I've come to a place where I honor and respect that about myself. And on those days, it's okay to take a break, because we're not doing this in silo. We are in a community. We're all kind of working towards the same goal. And if you do join a community, you can remember that there are other people out there fighting the fight on the days when you don't feel so high. So just showing up again, like you said, in community and acknowledging the people around us is very important. But ultimately it comes down to action, taking action, whatever that looks like that day. It's about being open-minded and finding the courage to choose change, to ask questions, to be curious, to explore new ways of living life. And that might sound very easy when I say this, but it's actually really hard, because we're creatures of habit, and it's really hard to change behaviors and ways. But it's also very rewarding. And I think when we look at it as a journey that we get to be on together, to learn and to grow and expand, we actually get to be excited about this kind of transition into a new world. And yeah, it's a daily practice, but you get better as you go on it.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Such like a good way to like look at it and take on being within the climate space. Just to kind of elaborate on your take action piece, for everyone, just thinking about things that are both large and small. So like a small action could be anything from like starting off by signing a petition to finding an alternative to a single-use plastic in your life, all the way up to like larger actions that could be, going to the Capitol, setting up a meeting to talk with your representatives about climate policy, to harnessing the professional skills that you already have to help a company that is focused on climate and sustainability. So a career shift, kind of like the previous panel was talking about, these are all very powerful, but I think one thing to kind of hone in and focus on is this idea of finding something that is right for you and feels aligned for you. As humans, almost everything we do has an environmental impact, and thus one on climate. So there are absolutely 1 million touch points and ways to get involved. So if something doesn't feel absolutely right for you, it's not resonating, you don't need to feel obligated to keep doing that thing. So, but speaking on action, and in your book, you talk about how taking action can actually benefit you from a personal standpoint. Could you elaborate on that?
Yes, I love to. One of my favorite topics. So if you think of that person who someone who works in philanthropy and is doing good in the world and seems to be so happy and content and fulfilled, and you're like, it's probably a facade, like this cannot be true. I just want to say that it's not a facade, and I've realized that actually what happens is when you participate in the change and you show up as the change you want to see and you take action in community work, whatever that looks like for you, your body will actually reward you. So it will start producing so-called happiness hormones or feel-good hormones. The four main ones are dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, and endorphins. And they are fueled from different activities in our lives. So you may know about them, but dopamine is like a productivity hormone. When we finally clean the kitchen or get something done, we do that phone call, we feel real good about ourselves because it's dopamine, but it's floating in our bodies. Serotonin is a mindfulness hormone. So when we slow down and maybe meditate or go for walks in nature or whatever it might be, we feel more grounded, more like in tune with ourselves and at peace with the world. That's serotonin doing that for us. Oxytocin is that bonding hormone that makes us feel like we belong to something bigger than ourselves, which is really important because we're social creatures. And lastly, endorphins are that like exercise, runner's high. It also is known to increase sex drive and stuff like that. Great. So those are the four happiness hormones, and it's really important that we feel all four, because in order to continue to show up as climate optimists or whatever we want to call ourselves, we have to feel healthy, happy, empowered. But actually, when you start taking action, I realized that you fuel all four as well. So the body will start to reward you for doing these things. And that's kind of like the beautiful wheel that keeps spinning. And again, I talk a lot about this in my book, but that's sort of like, if you haven't figured out why you want to be the change in the world, do it for yourself, because it's actually a pretty awesome way of life.
Wow, that is so powerful. I feel like you can easily get caught up in the climate and sustainability space, feeling like living in alignment is a struggle, that it's an extra burden to day-to-day life. But knowing that taking that time and energy to make the changes for yourself and take those actions actually benefits you on a personal level, I think is just amazing. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. All right, so Anne, how do you recommend people start taking action and embodying climate optimism while doing so?
This is going to sound very contradictory, but I think the first step is just starting to slow down and doing less. We always feel like it's so urgent, we have to like ramp up all the actions, but it starts by slowing down to create that space to start asking questions and being more mindful with what we're doing and being more aware of our daily habits and whatnot. So just allow yourself to slow down. I know I'm saying this as a New Yorker and an Aries who's like always running around like crazy, but it's a daily practice that we can get better at, myself included. And then once you start to slow down, just start to really pay attention to your footprints, both negative and positive ones. You mentioned too, Lindsay, that just to be alive today is to leave a negative footprint. So it's not technically our fault. We should kind of like skip that shame and blaming, but just recognizing, where am I leaving a negative footprint? How can I eliminate that as much as possible? And then at the same time, where can I leave a positive one? We can contribute to positive energy just in the environment around us, spiritually, how we show up in the world, but also by taking action that are good, that are regenerative, that helps farmers, restore soil. All these things, they're actually ways that we can take action that has a positive footprint and not just eliminate our negative ones. How about you?
Okay, so for me, I think my tip for starting out in climate action would be to find a balance between personal and systemic-based action. So I think a lot of us in the room probably already know that there are about 100 companies that are contributing to 70% of global greenhouse gas emissions. So it's absolutely imperative that we find ways to raise our voice, hold those companies and governments accountable, and kind of be part of that movement and keep demanding that change. But also, it's important to remember that as a consumer and a member of a society, that your day-to-day choices have a collective impact. and that you absolutely have the power to help shift culture and to help shift expectations within the marketplace. So just kind of finding the peace and the balance in between those two things is, I think, helpful when starting out. Okay, so our last question, what is your favorite climate action?
I always try to come up with something new because I want to be more fun, but I think it's composting because it allows me to both eliminate my negative footprint by reducing food waste from landfills where it creates methane, and also increase my positive footprint because if I compost my food, I can become nutrients to the soil and help the soil bounce back. And so I think composting is sexy and fun and not as hard as you might think it is. And also I recently learned that New York City wants to make composting available for everyone, curbside composting, no matter where you live. So that's an amazing win that we should definitely celebrate. What is your favorite climate action?
I too love composting. I bring our compost to the community garden, but I think as evident probably by my newsletter, that I really love talking about and sharing all of the amazing things that are happening in the climate space and the good news that's floating around. But what that might look like for someone else, it's not necessarily going on social media and sharing what you're doing. Like, just like you would talk to your friends about a new brand that you like or what you were doing over the weekend, you can start sharing with them what you're doing and what you're learning in the climate space. And, you know, I know that that can be intimidating, especially depending on who you're talking to, but, you know, I think just being able to approach those conversations with an open heart and an open mind without shaming someone for doing or not doing something. Like you just never know the ripple impact that you can have just by being a safe space for someone to start having these conversations. And I think it's something like 70-ish% of the global population is actively worried about climate change. So you're not alone in this, and your friends and family probably want to talk to you about it. So just getting those conversations going. Okay, well, thank you, Anne, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, Anne-Therese. What a lovely idea that we can all be a little more optimistic in our everyday lives. So next up, we have Madeline McGilvery, the founder of Superheroes Needed.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. It's so wonderful to be here. We've been sitting for a bit, I know, so I'll try to be as entertaining as possible. I'm just so grateful to be able to celebrate with everyone and really learn from all these amazing women in climate. My name is Madeline McGilvery, and I am a lifelong I'm still considered youth, climate activist and a scientist and a science communicator. When I was 9 years old, I founded my first project. So I had this sketchbook of superheroes that I would draw. They were all women. There was one called Enviro Girl. There was like Water Woman. It was like very cliche, but that was my natural way. And so I basically realized that what I'm about is essentially this vision that we are all actually the superheroes that we need to fight the climate crisis. And so I decided to call this project Superheroes Needed, which is very cute, but also I think a message that can resonate with all of us. I had a very unique upbringing, being the daughter of a sort of nonprofit environmental lawyer, single mom, who basically fought for communities who really were on the front lines of a lot of extractive exploitation from fossil fuels. And so growing up, I got to see these people in these communities who really were real-life superheroes. And so basically, a lot of these people were women, one of whom I remember being Donatilda, who is this woman who's a mother who basically fought for clean water for herself, for her family, for her community in Ecuador that was really ravaged by Chevron for many decades. I also remember a woman named Melina Lubucan Massimo, who led myself and others through 14 kilometers of barren and kind of desolate tar sands in her indigenous community in Alberta, Canada, another superhero. And of course, my mom, who I have to mention, who really is a superhero in the sense that she has fought for clean water and for a livable climate and worked with a lot of communities worldwide. And she also founded a nonprofit called Seeding Sovereignty, which is a wonderful, special women and BIPOC-led environmental justice nonprofit. So basically, my whole life I've been kind of on this path towards finding my own superpowers. Like, what are my superpowers? So at 15, I was a youth plaintiff in a landmark climate lawsuit. Basically, we sued the federal government for not taking our futures into account. And that has led to some amazing youth-led lawsuits, climate lawsuits following that. And at 18, I became a citizen scientist for the first time with the Five Gyres Institute, and that started my journey on microplastics and communicating about the microplastics issue and how that intersects with climate. And now, at 26, which is 17 years after I founded Superheroes Needed, which feels like quite a long time, I've realized that this kind of innocent childhood vision of Superheroes Needed is not so innocent. It's kind of just what a lot of us really need right now. I think the question that I get a lot, which I'm sure a lot of us also get, is just like, this is what we're talking about, like, what do I do? Like, this is the question. And so I think the thing is that kind of Superheroes Needed is an attempt to, after all these years of activism, to answer that question. So understanding your superpowers requires a massive shift in consciousness. I think when we think about like superhero movies, why they're box office hits and like why they're so popular is because I feel that maybe the ultimate luxury of existence is being saved by someone else. Unfortunately, we just don't have that, and it's kind of up to us. So Superheroes Needed is really about that. It's about the fact that this is a long game, and your superpowers should bring you joy, right? And so this is really about what we're talking about, turning to the people next to us. It's about community, really fostering community, and if you have the ability for what you're doing to bring you joy in the long run. So as I mentioned, I've seen a lot of kind of fossil fuel disaster zones, which I have come to see as kind of like hellscapes. They're very desolate, and I'm here to say that in all of these quote-unquote hellscapes, there are these angels, these people who are superheroes, these Donatildas and these Melinas, and like they're in the darkness, but they're lights in the darkness, and they never doubted their power. They're experts in their own experience. And so are we. We're all experts in our own experience. And so let's be inspired by them and find our own superpowers, because we really are the superheroes that we need. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madeline. So now we have Fatiha Ayat, who is joining us here on stage now.
Some of you might know Shatkhira, a remote place in the southern maritime territory of Bangladesh. But many of you don't know Shati, a woman who has shown the world what sustainable adaptation really means. When the soil of the Bangladesh coastal regions turns saline, it becomes impossible for the men to grow crops on the fields, resulting Shati's husband Shamim to migrate to the city, leaving Shati alone in a dark patch of cloud. But Shati shines her own sky by farming crab in the saline land that her husband left abandoned, which has resulted her to earn more money than her husband used to get. This is what sustainable adaptation is really all about, and you will find thousands of Shatis all around the world who are continuously constrained by the climate cohabitation. And don't worry, that is not the first and last time I will say that. Today here at this prestigious and prominent program, I would like to talk about how women like Shati are continuously constrained by the climate cohabitation and how they can provide a considerable and comprehensive character in combating this contemporary crisis. Told you. And the women here in the US itself are also being affected. In fact, 2/3 of the jobs lost after Hurricane Katrina were lost by women. Often the only ways to get jobs and work after a natural disaster is through construction and rebuilding, and that is a male-dominated sector. There is a direct link in climate change with asthma in adolescent girls, lung cancer in midlife ladies, and strokes and dementia in older women. In fact, statistics have shown that 35%, 65% of the jobs of the people displaced by the climate change were in the US were women. And that is only statistics. We know that there are 3 types of lies. Lies, damn lies, and statistics. The real situation is always way worse than what statistics offer. So, there are many more people suffering this dreadful problem outside these doors. Right now, I know it, I know you know it, but it seems like our world leaders don't know it yet. Because we do not see them taking gender-sensitive response. We do not hear them putting gender equality at the center of the climate solutions. We do not see them find them addressing the gender gap while dealing with the climate calamities. Okay, so our leaders are not leading, but the women of today's days are not sitting idle either. They are not waiting for our leaders to launch loud, lucrative, and luminous initiatives. Let me share an example with you. In Ghana, women produce butter and cheese from the domesticated animals they have, such as cows and goats. But to sell these, they use vans and trucks, which is not very cost-effective for them. In order to address this problem, they have created bamboos out of bicycle to not only minimize their cost, but also have a zero-emission strategy. See, this is the power of today's woman. This is the strength of today's woman. I started with the story of Shati, a woman from Bangladesh. I would like to end my speech today by finishing with the story of Shannon, a woman from the Netherlands. I'm sure that many of you have heard of the concept of the Hanging Garden of Babylon, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world by the Sumerian king Nebuchadnezzar. But I'm sure that a lot of you have not heard of the concept of a floating garden. So in the Netherlands, along the North Sea coast, a lot of the land is being submerged due to the sea level rise. And to address this problem, Shannon started using hydroponics, a type of horticulture, to grow her crops without using any soil on a water-based mineral nutrient solution. And this is the concept of a floating garden. And it is not less a wonder than the Hanging Garden of Babylon. So this is how the woman can lead in climate optimism. This is how they can take the baton for climate mitigation. All we need is just a gender-sensitive response from the policymakers. All we need is to put gender equality at the center of the climate solutions from the global leaders. Thank you.
Okay, wow. Thank you so much, Fatiha. That was beautiful. So we're just going to talk a little bit about, I think we've been talking about the need for joy if it's accessible and our journeys in this work. So I want to talk to you a little bit and ask you about, like, as an amazing climate activist who's also 10, how do you balance school and your work?
Thank you for the question. I actually try my best to balance activism work and school work. And I'm actually a student, that's my identity. And then I'm a climate campaigner and child rights activist. So what I do is I try to be in school every day, right? But if an important climate opportunity to speak about the climate comes up, then in the big platform, then I definitely have to miss school. But I always make up my work. I always make up my work and try my best to finish all the classwork. And activism work has never actually made my grades fail. And I always try to balance my work throughout the week so that I don't put any pressure or burden on myself.
Great answer, thank you. One last question, because I think we're running a little tight on time. What do you do for fun? What are your hobbies?
Number one, I love to read, right? So reading has always been my hobby. I love to read mostly fiction, so it could be like mystery or classics or epic thrillers, or you know, I love fiction. So I love to read, and I also love to draw or sketch, right? So I cut out little things, or I love to paint as well. My painting is actually being displayed at Colors of Humanity Art Gallery, and I have been awarded the Amazing Artist Award by the Advent Art World.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Wow, thank you very much. Feel a little unaccomplished now at my age versus her. So thank you very much, Fatiha and Madeline. So next up we have a panel on climate action with Sonam Villani, Elizabeth Landu, Emily McClone, and Emily Ewell.
Okay, so we will try to follow that, but as women in our 30s and 40s, I think, we also feel underaccomplished. So, thank you all for being here. I'm Sonam Villani. It is fantastic to see the Women in Climate community, see many of you again, and see many of you in real life for the first time. So welcome to New York for those who are visiting. I am the founder of Street Life Ventures. We are a venture studio and a fund. We build and invest in the sustainable hardware of cities today and not in 2049 when a lot of these things are set to happen. And I am super excited for today's panel because we have a rock star group of women doing amazing things, and we're gonna get right to it because we know that we are in between you and drinks and networking. So to start off with, can we get your life history in 2 minutes or less?
Sure, I'll take the challenge first. Hi, I'm Elizabeth Landau. I am one of the founders of a climate fintech startup called Green Portfolio. We are focused on helping individuals like you, me, understand the climate impact of your money and your financial decisions. I didn't start out in climate, like a lot of people here actually. I was a chemical engineer and eventually became a marketer and now a founder. And in terms of why I chose climate as a passion now for professional and personal interest, you know, I really get angry when I see the words green, carbon free, carbon neutral, sustainability get thrown around meaninglessly in an attempt really to mislead all of us. And at this point, I want to be able to call out greenwashing and make sure that everyone understands how to use their finances as a tool for climate activism.
Right, Elizabeth. My name is Emily McClone, and I'm the director of Peace Boat US, and I'm just so excited to be here, so thank you again for this invitation. I started out, I would say, my climate activism and interest in sustainability when I was maybe 16 years old. I went to volunteer in Mexico, and that really changed my life. So I always encourage everyone to volunteer and get involved in projects that you're passionate about. After learning Spanish, I started kind of volunteering and doing more projects in Latin America. And soon after, I found myself going to Japan, where I wanted to compare Japanese culture, Asian culture with Latin American culture. And soon after that, found myself traveling on board a ship called the Peace Boat, which is where I work today, 18 years later. So it's taken me around the world and has continued to inspire me to do a lot more. And it brought me to New York City, from Tokyo, Japan to New York. So I'm very thankful to be here and excited to share my story with you all.
Thanks, Emily. I'm Emily Ewell. I'm the founder and CEO of Panties, which is the leading menstrual underwear brand in health and sustainability globally. Who here is familiar with menstrual underwear, or maybe uses menstrual underwear? Quite a good crowd here. So I brought an example to show you. For those that aren't aware, menstrual underwear looks and feels just like normal underwear, but has a technical liner, which is highly absorptive and kills bacteria
and odors as well. It's a part of a new revolution, I think, in the women's health space. We're based in São Paulo, Brazil, and we really launched with a focus on eliminating menstrual waste. It's estimated that up to 1 trillion menstrual products are disposed of every year, and they take up to 500 years to decompose. So you can imagine that every tampon or pad that's ever been used is still on the planet today in a landfill somewhere, which is very shocking. And after we launched, we really focused on innovation. All of our products are made and produced in Brazil. We work really closely with the factories, do a lot of donation programs in the Amazon as well with tribes. And since then have launched the first absorbent leak-proof nursing bra in the world, fitness line, swim line. We have a pharmacy line with Johnson & Johnson. And as a B Corp, we're a certified B Corporation, focused on sustainability both on the women's health side, but also on the sustainability and environmental side. So we were the first lingerie brand to launch carbon labels. We are carbon neutral, but we really focus on carbon literacy, and I think that that transparency is really important, not just for our consumers, but also for us in making sure that we're using the best material, the best processes to reduce our impact and have goals and metrics around that. So excited to share more with you all very shortly.
They're amazing. So, when we were preparing for this panel, which is all about individual action leading to the collective whole, right? We've talked about this basically this entire evening in terms of how much each of us can do in our own consumer choices, in our own financial choices, and what have you to make a difference. And so I was doing some Googling about this topic to find some stats because I'm very much so a numbers person. And I found a 12-part Wikipedia article about individual climate action, which is the first hit. And I'm going to open this up and ask you all, what do you think your individual carbon footprint is? Okay, you're close. Any other guesses? 19, okay. 16, someone said 16, yes? All right, 16 is the winner. So in the United States, our carbon footprint is about 16 tons a year. The average carbon footprint of an individual anywhere on planet Earth is 7 tons per year. We need to get to 2.3 tons per year by 2030 if we have any hope of meeting the 1.5 degree targets that we all set at the Paris Accords. So, if you're in India, you're actually at that number. You're at 2.3 tons per year. If you're in France or in China, you've got, a little bit of a ways to go. If you're in the United States or in Australia, God help us. If you're a billionaire, please do not use your private jets and other things. But I'll just say, right, these are numbers that sound shocking to us, especially when it comes to the reduction that we all need to make collectively over the next 8 years. And I would love to ask each of you, what are you doing both in your individual lives and your companies to help people like us actually make that transition?
Great question. So I'll tackle the individual action into collective action and how I'm doing that with my company. So, where you bank, where your money's sitting, it's not just sitting idle. The bank is using it to lend out, and most of the emissions from banks are due to scope 3, which scope 1 is really what you can control, scope 2 is around electricity and energy, and scope 3 is kind of throughout your whole value chain. And one of the categories in there is lending. And so big banks are lending your money to oil and gas companies. I think CDP had the report come out that the amount of emissions in the financed emissions section for a financial institution was 700 times greater than their scope 1 emissions reporting. So just think about that. You really need to be conscious about where you're banking. That's something we're trying to help make easier for you by going and looking at climate-friendly banks, assessing them, giving you recommendations on that. The other area is investing. And with ESG investing, it's been a very popular term over the last couple of years. Unfortunately, ESG scores, ESG ratings, are not synonymous with doing good for the environment and climate impact. It's usually industry peers ranked against one another. It's not necessarily taking everything into account. It's how, Exxon can have an 82 out of 100 in an environmental score. It's an oil company. And then be put into an ESG fund because it had a good score. And so you, as an individual who wants to do, align your money with your values, picks an ESG fund, you could very well be investing in fossil fuels. And we've been crunching some numbers. If you look at the S&P 500 versus, I won't say who, but certain ESG funds, you actually can be increasing your exposure to fossil fuels if you shift from just S&P 500 into an ESG fund. So do you have time to go read all these annual reports? Do you have time to go look at all the holdings? No. So we're going to do that for you. We're going to look at all of that, look at metrics around fossil fuel exposure, business operations, emissions, plans to reduce emissions. Does the company have one? Is there a science-based target? Some don't. And do all that for you so you can have a climate scorecard of where your money's at. And just to wrap that up, individual action does drive pressure and collective action. Generation, founded by Al Gore, actually put out something around listed companies, mainly public, usually the ones that you're invested in, account for 40% of emissions. And there's also studies coming out of Germany where if public pressure is put on companies, they will actually start to reduce their emissions, unlike companies that are not pressured, and usually the emissions will increase annually. So what we're trying to do with our platform is have you all on there, and we can actually drive that collective force, so that way your movement of your money and your voice is heard through collective pressure.
I love all the connections. I was gonna say, every speaker that we've had here tonight, I'm just really excited to get to see you all more in this space and connect. So, again, I work for Peace Boat US. It's an international nonprofit organization, and I would say, from my personal actions, I've always been kind of interested in environment and wanting to connect more with nature and do more things that are sustainable. So I like the daily composting, the bringing my own bag to go shopping. The simple actions are things that I think hopefully all of us in this room are already doing because it's Climate Week and we care. So we should take those small actions every day and really try to live that life of becoming a zero waste household as much as possible, and really looking at all these sustainable products that are listed here today. I think the more we can invest our time and money into sustainable things in our daily life, that will make a big difference, and people will notice that. Your friends will notice, your partners will notice. So I try to take those daily actions, and that's important. I also try to get outdoors a lot. I'm a big outdoor enthusiast, whether I'm snowboarding or skiing or hiking or at the beach or diving, just connecting with nature. I think it's really important because, especially being in big cities, we often sometimes forget how much we need that, and it's important. But on the larger scale, with Peace Boat, we have a passenger ship which holds about 1,000 people, and we travel the world raising awareness for the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So you'll see here I have the SDG 7 for renewable energy. And we work very closely with the United Nations. So I serve as the UN liaison based in New York, but we also are inviting all kinds of guest speakers on board our ship to raise awareness. So really active in education. We're basically an educational platform that floats at sea. But we also know that we need a more sustainable vessel. So we have now launched our Peace Boat Eco Ship, which will be a ship running on solar and wind power to reduce our CO2 by 40%. Super awesome. Want to change the maritime industry. Yeah, we realize, there are so many ships out there that we know are polluting the ocean, and we're just one ship that, focuses on education. But what about those fleets of ships from, Carnival Cruises to Disney Cruise or Royal Caribbean? They can really make an impact. So we're trying to show them, by being the nonprofit organization that we are, working towards the UN Sustainable Development Goals, to be a flagship for the SDGs and to raise awareness and to make that maritime education, raising awareness, learning about ocean acidification firsthand, finding out about conservation and the effects of climate change on coastal communities by having guest speakers on board. So working to raise awareness and just educating, and then setting the example is our goal with Peace Boat. Thank you.
That's amazing. We were joking before the session, if you look at the data, the biggest thing that I'm doing is probably living in Brazil because my carbon footprint is so much lower there. But having lived in Brazil, Switzerland, Spain, I think when you live in other environments or cultures, it really opens your eyes a little bit to different routines and different products. And so I really became aware of the reuse movement in general, but also eliminating plastic in your routine personally is something that has made a big difference for me. So whether it's tampons or pads, which are 90% plastic, but also bar-based shampoos is amazing. Also body wash, you can use bar soap, and you eliminate a lot of plastic bottles over the course of the year if you do that. So that's something I would highly recommend. Obviously on Panty's side, we launched the business really focused on reducing waste created by menstruation, but we started to receive a lot of questions from our community, but is the product sustainable? How sustainable is the product? And I always say that any product that you consume by nature is not sustainable. So there's no product that exists that's 100% sustainable. There's no company that exists that's 100% sustainable. And so I really see sustainability as a commitment that companies make to being transparent with their community and creating targets. Well, first knowing where they are on their sustainability journey, but then making targets and being very clear about how they want to evolve as a company. So about a year after we launched, we transitioned all of our fabrics to biodegradable nylon fabrics, which is a technology from Brazil as well. Brazil is an amazing leader in the sustainability and environmental sustainability space. And then after that, we started really working on how we could understand our carbon footprint as a business. We partnered with Weight Carbon, which is a globally certified carbon expert. And so they actually went through a full analysis of all the raw materials that we use, all the transport and logistics that we use, even like what type of trucks we're using to transport from one supplier to our warehouse, then to our factories. And so it's a really in-depth process, but for us it was really enlightening. And we also compensate for use and disposal, which is a lot of companies don't do that, and it really enlightened. It had a lot of insights there. That there's things that, for example, detergents that you use to wash your clothes are horrible for the environment. And so we started actually developing a product with enzymes that's coconut-based, that's natural and biodegradable. So I think there's a lot of product innovation that we focus on, but education is also a big pillar for us. We're in the business of behavior change. Behavior change is really hard for most people, and I think you don't want to use shaming. I think one of the other panels talked about that, but really create space and inspire people to make that change, and I think education is a really big part of that. And through our donation programs, we work with a lot of tribal communities. And we see that a lot of these communities, there's never been a moment for us in big cities to see the connection between our health and the health of the environment, but these communities live that every day. And so when we donate our products, we see that instead of using disposable products and putting them in the middle of the Amazon, for example, or trying to burn them, which is something that I never even thought about. A lot of these communities don't have waste removal. And so we solve another problem for them, which is like they say, oh, it can take up to 3 days to burn used menstrual products. I never even thought about that. So we start to learn and understand more about how we're really creating an impact on the environmental side, but also helping women along the way. Mm-hmm.
So, wow, I think just these three alone, right? There are lots of things that we can do to change our financial behavior, our travel behavior, and our clothing purchases, among other things. And, I find it very interesting, some of the examples that you gave, and I'd love to, ask a question around, we're all here for Climate Week, right? There are literally thousands of people here from around the world. There are 136 events, last I counted, from our newsletter. And there's tons going on this week, right? So what are some things that you hope to accomplish, that you wish this community can accomplish over the next week in terms of galvanizing partnerships and really focusing in on climate action?
So on a personal note, being newer to climate, and I guess I started on this journey professionally maybe almost 3 years ago now at this point, but it seems shorter. I just want to meet more people that are interested in working in the space, just interested in it as a topic, expanding my network of people and understanding like how I can help you and we can work together to solve this issue. For you all, like what I would just say is, either at the company you're at now, or if you're looking for something new, what's great is like climate is like a full-blown industry at this point. It is integrating into everything. There are now like versions of LinkedIn that have started as startups themselves that are now helping people figure out how to use their skills to get into climate. So it's a really emerging and large industry that you don't have to be a data scientist, you don't have to be a PhD chemist to get involved. There's ways for you to use your skills, and I'm definitely one of those people who's moved into this and figures out how to make a difference. And so I just ask you to think about that. Any change is important, and whether big or small. And then from the finance side, figure out what bank you're at and what they're doing with your money. And if you want help with that, you can join our waitlist, greenportfolio.com/waitlist. So, and happy to talk to you after. So.
I think for Peace Boat and for myself in general, just all of the programs that we're working on, I would love to see them grow. There's about 100 of my colleagues based in Tokyo, Japan, but I'm kind of here by myself in New York, so I have a lot of things going on, and so I love partnership building because that's really the only way forward. I think that partnerships are so key. So I'm always looking for new partners, just like you said, to meet more people in the space, which really happy to see so many people here tonight, and also creating space for collaboration using our ship as a venue. I always welcome guest speakers and partners to come on board and to share their work with us. So I'm always opening doors for anyone here to come on board with us. And I would love to see our EcoShip Zero project happen. We are now, as I mentioned, working towards renewable energy with solar and wind power, but we'd also like to have a zero carbon emission ship in the future. And to do that, we need to accelerate financial support because we are a nonprofit, but we have the social business side in Japan. So trying to find out how we can navigate that system and really accelerate action through finance and support and mutual support for these large scale projects that we've kind of taken on this large challenge for, putting kind of that call out to partners who are interested to talk to me afterwards. And then lastly, I was just really excited to see some youth here today. We have a youth scholarship called the Youth for the SDGs, a scholarship program for ages 18 to 30 years old for young people who are already interested in sustainability. I'd love to scale up that project as well for anyone who's interested to see how we can get more scholarships and encourage young people to get involved, because I think the earlier the better. We don't really have much time to flip things around, and I am very hopeful that we can, but we do need to act now, so the more people we can educate, the better.
Amazing. So I think for me this week, I'm just excited to connect with so many amazing people. Obviously, partnerships are also huge for us. We have a lot of brand partners as well as retail partners, so both in Latin America and Europe. But I think as a brand and looking at you all here tonight, I can say that we can invent or develop and produce and sell as many sustainable products or more sustainable products, but it's not us that makes a difference. It's really the consumers that on a daily basis make a more sustainable choice that make the impact. And so I really see us as more of an enabler for that. And it's not panties that makes the difference, but it's you all that makes the difference. And I see what Michelle has done with Women in Climate and building community, and I have a lot of hope around, I think women and everyone has such an opportunity to create community, and each of us can really focus on that, whether it's our friends, whether it's the company that we work at, whether it's our, immediate neighbors and neighborhood community. And so I think that's where we're gonna really drive a big difference. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just going to end by saying, I'm actually someone who spent her entire career in the climate space. I've studied this stuff in college and have spent the past 15 years in infrastructure and finance and sort of building resilient cities. And I personally am so excited to see a room full of women and men who are here transitioning, getting interested in this space. And it's really, really heartwarming to see that and have all of you so engaged. So thank you for being here. Because I have the microphone, I'm also going to give you some backstory. And Michelle actually doesn't know this, but we were actually sitting on my couch actually about over the summer, and it was extremely hot. And that's when this idea came about. And I just want to shout out to this entire team of volunteers who've done an incredible job, like tons and tons of Excel spreadsheets and Notions and WhatsApp groups. So give it up. They're all in the back doing all of this. This was really a labor of love that came together over the past couple of months, and there were a lot of people involved. Women don't congratulate themselves often enough, so please, say thank you to this group. And with that, I will give it back to Nishasha. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lovely panel. So, who learned something tonight? Amazing. Love to see that. Love, love, love. Who wants to now speak to at least one of our speakers now that they have a chance? Amazing. Also love to see that. So now you will have the opportunity to do so. We have about a half an hour left in this space. Again, thank you very much to the generous Human Scale, to all of our partners, Skylight Law, First Republic Bank, Oceanic Global, Energy Hub, and Brute Media for live streaming this event. Please don't forget to drop your name tags with us. We use them for every event. We also are a 501c3, so if you have the ability to donate, we are able to put more and more events on in the near future and coming up. So thank you so much to each of you for attending. Thank you for caring, thank you for coming, and thanks for tuning in, and have a great night.